7:30 to go in the fourth quarter.
Great stuff.
What's the live total in that game?
The live total in that game is 230.5.
In the Orlando game?
Yes.
Nice.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, I had 211.5.
Oh, yeah. That's a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
All right, now time for my favorite guest of the week, my favorite time of the week. We welcome on Patrick Everson, Vegas Insider senior reporter, and I do not say this about every guest. Pat, thanks so much for joining us. I actually want to start with the Heisman Trophy, man, because Hendon Hooker is now the new favorite to win the Heisman. I've been talking up Hendon Hooker all season long. I would take him after C.J. Stroud, even over Bryce Young. He went from 66 to 1, and now where are those odds at right now for Hendon Hooker? And also, what kind of result is that for the book? Because you would figure Bryce Young, obviously won it last year. He comes back at Alabama. C.J. Stroud was a huge favorite, the favorite to take home the award. Would this be a loss or a win for the book if Hendon Hooker ends up bringing home this award?
Well, I think, and first off, thanks to the three of you for having me on tonight. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I think it's a situation. It's going to depend on the book.
Okay.
But in the report that I've got up, I did a short piece for FoxSports.com this week that kind of outlines where this has gone and what the progression has been and so forth. And there are some tickets out there at some longer numbers, but they're not very big tickets. Seamus McGee at BetMGM noted they did, and as you noted, he opened 66 to 1. They didn't really do much with that in the off season. They really started moving in more aggressively over the first few weeks of the college football season. And he said, look, we've got a 12 to 1 out there that would win $6,000. So somebody got 12 to 1 for $500. Somebody did get $100 down at 50 to 1 to win $5,000. But as you guys know, when this, BetMGM is this behemoth, these are rounding errors. So while Hooker is the worst outcome, he's still a win for the book. Such was the money that's come in on all season long on even a very short prices on Stroud and on Young and maybe one or two others. Actually, they were getting hit. BetMGM was getting hit pretty good. And forgive me for not remembering the name off the top. Oh, Jalen Daniels.
Yeah.
He was getting a bunch of tickets and money. So he was the real problem. And he's still the worst outcome, but he hasn't played in a month practically. So he's obviously not a problem anymore. So while Hooker is not the preferred outcome for the book, he's still a winner for the book at BetMGM and also at one or two other places, including Fox Bet. But yeah, it's been a fascinating dive. He's now the favorite at BetMGM. I think the last I checked, he was even money, and Stroud was at plus 175. So they're both right there. It's pretty much a two-person race at this point. And but yeah, if you were smart enough, did you get in on him there, Ryan? Did you take a piece of that?
No, I played Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back for Alabama, and C.J. Stroud. That was it for me, though.
Patrick, I'm curious. You mentioned just kind of like what is a rounding error, and what I'm curious, sort of to build on that. What does a really bad loss for a book on a prop like this look like?
Well, on a prop like this, let's keep in mind too. There's a couple things at play. Yes, you can get some of these players at really long odds, but pretty much every book has significantly lower limits on prop bets.
Right.
Any prop bet. Even in the Super Bowl, you'll see books that will, unless you're a high roller who maybe made an arrangement with the casino, if it's a book that's tied to a casino, which as we see in these cases more and more is not necessarily the case. But, like Superbook, for example, when they put out, they're like first with their huge, massive catalog of prop bets. Well, it's $2,000 max on any of those. So, they're never going to get dinged like massively. But if you took a mid 5-figure loss on a prop bet, that would be pretty significant. And there are Super Bowl props that do have that happen, where the public is really on them. Like, will there be a 2-point conversion or a safety or, those crazy ones that I love to bet those too. And I admit it, they're public. They're not sharp. I don't care. I like having some money on those just in case they happen, in case the game goes to overtime, which, still waiting on. But those are the ones that those could, for a Super Bowl, Trista, those could turn into 6 and maybe even 7-figure losses. There was a run of a couple of years in a row, or maybe 3 out of 4 years, something like that, where there was a safety, and the books just got clobbered on those props. So, again, losing $5,000 to a guy who got $100 down at 50 to 1, or $6,000 to somebody at, it's like I said, for for a place like BetMGM or most of these major books, it literally is a rounding error, and they'll totally take that.
Good stuff there, Pat. The big game this week might be the biggest game of the year, Georgia and Tennessee. It's very similar to what we saw Tennessee against Alabama. We know everybody was on Tennessee in that game to cover and win, and they did just that. Everybody's going to be on Tennessee to cover and win this game. Do you think the books are going to need Georgia more this weekend than they did Alabama about a month ago?
That's a really good question, PJ. I don't know if they'll need them more. That Alabama game was just so unique. Everybody and their mother was on Tennessee, and they were on Tennessee money line. Mm-hmm. So they were just like, hell with this. Let's get that big. Let's get that big plus money and turn a little into a lot here instead of having to, lay the -110 on the spread. So I don't know if the enthusiasm is quite as much for this, but it's certainly there. I think Tennessee is going to be the play this week. There was one odds maker who I talked to at the beginning of each week on college football for opening odds made your point exactly. He said it's similar to Alabama, Tennessee. The public is all over Tennessee catching more than a touchdown. I'm expecting we'll need Georgia for a large decision. Now, whether it becomes large in the way that the Alabama-Tennessee game was, it's a huge game. It's easily the game of the week, and there's been a ton of buildup. And now you've got the college football playoff rankings playing into this, and Tennessee #1. How about that? And I'm not saying it's not deserved. I'm just saying, how about that?
Yeah.
But it's there. I don't know if the energy is there the way it was for Alabama, Tennessee, but it is going to be a big decision. I do think the public is already hitting Tennessee and probably will continue to do so, although that line isn't really doing that much, 8.5, 8.5, 8. If it gets below 8, then it kind of gets more interesting for sure.
Pat, another interesting game coming up this weekend. Clemson, who's undefeated right now, taking on Notre Dame, who's coming off a big win over Syracuse, 41-24 as 1.5-point favorites. So you look at this game, and Clemson opens up 3.5. We hit 4. There were even some 4.5s. And now we're back down to 4. I guess the next move will be pretty telling. Do we get closer to 3, or are we going up? Where do you see this number going, and what do you think the book's going to need? I'm guessing Clemson's probably a sharp and public play against the Irish this weekend.
It is. That's actually a good point. With the odds maker I spoke with on Monday morning about this, a mix of sharp and public play on Clemson early, and the line was kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit. I think Notre Dame will see its share of public play because Notre Dame is just a hugely public team. But one thing I thought was interesting that this odds maker pointed out is that bettors were really hitting Clemson money line early as well, willing to lay that juice and not have to worry about the spread. I think that's kind of telling as well.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a good spot for Clemson. I don't think Notre Dame's a great team, but Notre Dame's a good enough team. And Notre Dame went to Syracuse and had not really many problems there, while Clemson had its hands full with Syracuse on its home field. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a tough spot. And I feel like this is going to swing a little bit. Like I said, the odds maker I spoke with said a mix of sharp and public play on Clemson early. It seems I wouldn't be surprised to see a little more public money coming Notre Dame late, and maybe they end up needing Clemson in this game. And obviously Clemson needs this game to stay in that college football playoff conversation.
Yeah, I'm going money line as a Notre Dame fan. I'm thinking about even going to this game. But let's say let's say you want to play Notre Dame. Do you think that we're going up from here for maybe a 4.5 is going to become available and play that right now? Or, would you advise if you do want to play Notre Dame, just grab the 4 because you're probably not getting anything better?
That's a really good question. This has been going back and forth, like you said, between 4 and 3.5.
Yeah.
And even with one odds maker I checked with, it was 4.5 for a little bit last night into early today. Really good question. I don't know that you're going to – I would say if your preferred book gets back to 4 or 4.5, take the money line there.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to get to 3. I mean, I could be wrong because the public – it's Notre Dame we're talking about here, but it's not a good Notre Dame team. It's not a dynamic Notre Dame team. So that's kind of my thought on it.
Pat, let's talk NFL. My Lord, has the line moved between the Chiefs and the Houston Texans. I'm looking at your report for Week 9. Chiefs opened up as an 11.5-point favorite. I'm looking here at BetMGM right now, and where did it go? Wait, is that right?
Yeah, they're 12.5 right now.
Yeah, they're 12.5 as well. So what do you like in this game? Do you think it's going to continue to go up?
I'm kind of surprised it went up. The initial move with the odds maker I spoke with on Sunday, that I speak to every Sunday night from an article that's up on Vegas Insider and updates throughout the week, they opened Chiefs 11.5 and came down to 11 right away due to bets coming in on the dog. And generally those early bets are sharp plays, or at least people who are who feel like they're picking off a better number, even if they may not necessarily be considered sharp bettors. And now you're looking at 12s and 12. Well, mostly it's a line of 12.5.
Yep.
12 and a half, 12 and a half. I mean, it's just 12 and a half across the board. So I'm a little surprised by this, but that said, it's not the move surprises me maybe a little bit, but what the odds maker said is, the Titans have been on a roll, but mostly against weak competition. He says, we know the public is going to be all over Kansas City here, especially in this time slot, and especially this Sunday night game, and especially with the Chiefs coming in rested off their bye week. So they know bettors, the public at least, is going to be coming in with both fists full of money. So maybe they're just maybe they're seeing some of it already, and that's why this is up, and they're anticipating more, and maybe they just kind of want to stay ahead of it. It gets interesting if this gets to like 13 or beyond, for sure. You'd have to think the sharp guys would really like a piece of that on the underdog there.
Pat, we knew Rams-Bucks would be a big game when the schedules come out, but we didn't know it would be a big game because both teams really need a win really badly, right? And Tampa, they're -3 this week. I assume the public's probably going to be on Tampa just because they're at home, and more people probably trust Brady more than they do Stafford. The line is at 3. It started at 2.5, moved up to 3. Do you see it getting up to 3.5 or bouncing back down to 2.5, or do you think this pretty much stays firm at 3 this week?
It feels like a 3 to me. I can't promise anything, but it feels like a 3 to me. And again, the odds maker I speak with for NFL every Sunday night said that it's a really interesting game. As you noted, both these teams are having hugely disappointing seasons for teams that gave us a tremendous playoff game last year, which, by the way, was followed by the Bills-Chiefs playoff game. Holy hell, was that like the best Sunday of NFL ever?
It was unbelievable,
and I'm a Broncos fan. But he said he noted, look, the Bucs are still right in the mix in the NFC South because that division is down. Somehow the Falcons leading at this point. He said that they opened Bucs 2.5 -120, and they took a lot or rather they opened 2.5 flat, moved to -120 on Sunday night because they were seeing some sharp play. And he said also, and these are things to remind people of, if you ever feel like you might have an advantage a week out, don't forget to take a look at those look-ahead lines, because the look-ahead on Tampa was pick 'em last week. And he said we took a lot of wise guy action on Tampa on the look-ahead number, pick 'em. So he said it'll be interesting to see how this is bet this week. I don't think it gets beyond 3 because neither of these teams have been particularly fascinating or dynamic. But maybe it's 3 and juice one way or the other, depending on what they see over these next couple of days.
Pat, thanks so much. Great stuff tonight, man. We'll talk again next week. Enjoy the weekend, and a big win for your Broncos in London. So at least something good happened to one of us, because my team
how do you
sucks,
like him?
Pat.
How could you possibly like him, Pat?
Oh, let's ride. But
Mr. Unlimited.
On
Bronco
Phillies -1.5 runs tonight. Alternate run line. Bang bang.
Yeah,
bang.
there you go.
Bang, bang.
Broncos country.
Let's
ride.
ride.
Thanks, Pat. We'll talk again next week, man. I love that guy. Patrick Everson, our Vegas Insider senior reporter. Check him out, Vegas Insider. I could talk to him for like 3.5 hours.
Man.
I stalk him over the weekends. Like, not weird, well, kind of weirdly. Like, I have him on my notifications, I
Anytime
jump in
you
all
say
of his
you
Twitter
stalk him.
spaces.
Do you?
Oh, I love Pat. Great guy. We will take a break. We'll be back. BetMGM tonight.